The old woman, Mrs. Driscoll, woke with a start. A cold sweat clung to her wrinkled skin. She felt a strange weight, a pressure on her upper back. It was unfamiliar, unsettling. She tried to reach back, her gnarled fingers scraping against something unexpected. It was a lump, large and oddly smooth, like a grotesque egg nestled between her shoulder blades. Later that day, her grandson Tommy, a frail boy of 10, noticed it too. He had been reading to her, his voice a soothing murmur in the quiet house when he saw it. The lump shifted, pulsing faintly under her floral house dress. His blood ran cold. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice trembling. "What's that on your back?" Mrs. Driscoll, initially dismissive, allowed Tommy's growing fear to sway her. She stood before the dusty mirror, contorting her thin frame, trying to catch a glimpse of the anomaly. But the lump remained just out of sight. A chill, sharper than the winter draft, snaked down her spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The lump grew with alarming speed. It pulsed with a life of its own, a grotesque weakening heartbeat. At night, when the house creaked and groaned around them, Tommy could hear it, a soft, sibilant whisper emanating from the lump. It spoke of things unseen, of ancient gods. Mrs. Driscoll, her face etched with fear and confusion, tried to ignore the whispers. She prayed, her voice a shaky rasp, but the lump only throbbed in response. She consulted a doctor, a young man, dismissed it as arthritis, a cruel joke of aging. The local priest, Father Michael, offered prayers and blessings, but even his faith seemed to waver under the weight of the unseen entity that clung to Mrs. Driscoll. The doctor, young and skeptical, poked and prodded the lump with detached curiosity, his brow furrowing at the inconclusive results. Arthritis, he concluded, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. An unusual manifestation, but nothing to be overly concerned about. Mrs. Driscoll, prescription for painkillers and a heart heavy with dread. Father Michael, his face lined with years of witnessing both the divine and the profane, listened intently as Mrs. Driscoll poured out her terror. With holy water, the scent of incense briefly masking the musty odor emanating from the lump. He recited ancient verses, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hand, but the lump remained, a blasphemous growth. One morning, the whispers ceased. Tommy approached his grandmother's room, a knot of dread twisting in his gut. The door creaked open, revealing a sight that would forever haunt his dreams. The lump had split open, like a monstrous flower in bloom. It revealed a face, grotesque and inhuman, with eyes that burned with cold fire. It spoke then, its voice a deep, resonating growl that shook the very foundation of the house. It spoke of worlds beyond human comprehension, of ancient pacts and sacrifices long overdue. Then, with a laugh that echoed like shattering glass, it pulled Mrs. Driscoll into its gaping maw. The room fell silent, save for the soft, wet sounds of flesh being consumed. When the neighbors arrived, drawn by Tommy's hysterical screams, they found only Mrs. Driscoll's empty shell, her skin pale and lifeless. That night, alone in his bed, Tommy felt an itch on his back, an unbearable itch that seemed to burrow deep into his flesh.